A spotty start to Christmas. Spot was looking forward to Christmas Day. It was going to be her 6th birthday. 6 months, that is, because, as you know, dogs have shorter lives than us, and so they make up for this by giving themselves a birthday every human month. What a good idea. Spot had become very well known in the village. Whenever they saw her, children would call out, "Dalmatian!" and Spot would either stand up more proudly, if that were possible, or tug even harder on her owner's lead, which was very possible. Of course, being black and white, Dalmatians are the only dogs you can see in the light and the dark. In the light you see the dark spots, and in the dark you see the white ones. Now this was very handy for the owner, but it made it very unlikely that Spot could ever creep about and be camouflaged like so many other dogs. But then, on Christmas Eve, something remarkable happened that was going to change all that. Spot had just settled down to a warm and comfortable evening. She had a great tin of meat and a huge handful of biscuits, and had been given all the leftover bits from plates used by her owners as well. So she stretched out in her basket by the patio window in the dining room, while her owners talked in the sitting room, and began to snooze. Outside, it was pitch dark, although from time to time the moon peeped out from behind the clouds, and then it began to snow. Just a few flakes at first, but then more and more and more, until it was snowing so hard Spot could hardly see across the garden, even though the patio light was on. Spot had not seen snow before on any of her birthdays, because she was born in a warm part of the year when there is no snow. She looked at the flakes with great curiosity. She turned her head slightly to one side and tried to figure it out, as dogs do when they are puzzled. Soon the snow was half a bone deep. Dogs still love old-fashioned ways of measuring things. And then the bone disappeared altogether. The snow had become so deep it now started to rise up above the window pane. Spot was wondering about this and what it might be like. She'd seen lots of small white things scattered about before, like the time she found out how to pull on the end of a toilet roll and then chew all the paper off the roll. Oh, that had been fun because there was sufficient paper to cover the floor of 5 good-sized rooms. It was even funnier because our owners could not figure out where all the white paper had come from. They looked at the kitchen rolls and all over the place, but, at least for a while, they never thought of the toilet. But this white flaky stuff did not look like chewed toilet roll. There was just too much of it. While she was pondering on this point, something truly remarkable happened. Out in the garden, a large object was zooming down from the sky. It was too big to be an owl, it was too big to be a bat, and anyway, it just kept on coming. It was made of many different shapes, all tied together with a big lumpy shape at the end. It all skidded to a halt in front of the patio window. It was a whole team of deer, harnessed together, and a great pile of parcels on a cart with skids instead of wheels. Somewhere from among this giant pile of parcels, a great fat man appeared and waddled towards the window. As he approached, the window just seemed to dissolve, so he was able to walk right up to where Spot lay. By now Spot was all of a shiver with fright. Normally when she was frightened she would bolt off and hide under a chair or a table, but this time she was a shivering mass of jelly just rooted to the spot. The fat man spoke, and by the light of the room she could see he had a great red coat and a white beard.
"Hello, Spot," he guffawed. "I am Father Christmas, Santa Claus, and these are my reindeer, and that is my sleigh, all laden with parcels for the children of your village."
All very well for children, thought Spot, but what about me and all the other dogs? Is there a bag with bones underneath, or better still, how about a bag full of lovely cooked chickens?
"Well, Spot, you see, it is like this. You're pretty well known about the village by all the children, and we need your help. We have to deliver all of these presents, but we are not sure which children are at home and which have gone off on holiday. We want all children to have a great Christmas. So, those parcels we need to send off to where they are staying outside the village will have to go by Santa's plane. See it there, flying in circles above us, the long white one with the red nose? It is waiting for me to take up any presents that have to go to distant places. But we're not sure how to find out who is there and who is not, so, we thought of you.
Why me?
Well, you know all the children, and we want to find out who is here without them knowing. So we need something with an amazing nose which can't be seen. That is why we thought of you. You have a really good, wet nose, and we have watched you sniffing about. The disgusting things you smell out are really amazing.
They're not disgusting to me, thought Spot, feeling quite upset. But then, on reflection, she felt really rather pleased that someone had noticed her fine sense of smell. But you must have made a mistake, said Spot. You can see me in the light and the dark, and all the rabbits and deer can see me a mile off, although I am rather proud of my nose. And she tilted it so the wet tip of her nose sparkled in the light.
Ah, but you see, tonight is different. Just take a step out into the garden and see for yourself.
So Spot walked into the garden, right through the glass of the window, as though it was not there at all. Suddenly, she couldn't see herself. In the darkness and the snow, the white spots looked like snow and the dark spots looked like shadow. She was almost invisible. Spot raced round and round the garden. All she could see were her paw prints, and if you had been there, all you would have been able to see would have been the undersides of her feet, which are bright pink, and her tongue, which is also pink. Otherwise, she looked just like a shimmering shadow. After a bit of running backwards and forwards and looking at her paw prints in the snow, Spot walked back to the window, which just dissolved again, and came to stand by Santa.
See what I mean?
Asked Santa. She did, and she was rather proud of herself.
Now, this is what we want you to do. I want you to visit every house in the village where there should be children and find out if they are at home. Then come back and tell me so I can sort out the presents.
But how can I tell you that? Asked Spot. I can't write, and I can't remember them all in my head.
This is what we're going to do, said Santa. I'm going to sprinkle this memory powder all over you. It has the memory of every child in the village. One memory will be attached to each of your spots. It's just as well you have lots of spots. Then, when you find a child, the memory powder will glow with their name. No one else will be able to see this powder but you and me, and the reindeer, of course, for they are magical too. Now, off you go and sniff the whole village for me. And remember, we haven't got much time.
But what will happen if my owners wake up? Asked Spot.
Not a problem, chuckled Santa. I have just the thing for them in my pocket. It's called Keep Snoozing Powder. I will just go and drop some where they are already snoozing after eating their big meal. Then they will not wake up until you are back.
So off Spot trotted to the nearest neighbour's house. She couldn't see into the upstairs bedrooms, but instead she stood outside, lifted her nose high into the air, and sniffed deeply. Ah, yes, she thought, Charlie and Annie and Sarah are there. And as soon as she thought this, a spot glowed with the names Charlie, Annie, and Sarah. Then she trotted down the road, stopping outside every house and sniffing. Wherever children were at home, a new spot glowed with their names. Quite soon, Spot arrived at the churchyard. This was a favourite place for her, because it was full of other dog smells, rabbit smells, deer smells, and squirrel smells. She couldn't resist a quick sniff. And then, remembering her task, she quietly padded up to the door of the church, where the Christmas Eve service was underway. She took a long, deep sniff by the door, and as she did so, the names of any of the children who were at the service glowed on her spots. They counted because they were sure to go home later. All the way down Wood Lane she did this, then doubled back and went along Tanner's Alley, back around Cooper's Road, and on and on. The further she went, the more she glowed, and no one saw her at all, although the people looking out of the windows in the new inn might have wondered how the poor prince suddenly appeared by the roadside. Finally, she had been to every house in the village. Now her body was covered in glowing names, each group relating to a house and sitting on its own spot, some on white spots and the others on black spots. Then Spot raced back over the fields to her own garden and back to Santa. Santa was so pleased. He came over to Spot, who got so excited she had to run round and round the garden again before she could even stand still.
Well done, Spot, said Santa. Now you just have one final thing to do for me. I want you to stand next to my big sack of presents and shake yourself as though you were shaking off raindrops when you get wet.
And so she did. As she shook, starting first with her head, then her body, and finally her tail, all the names of glowing dust flew off and into the air. At the same time, all the presents popped out of Santa's sack. Glowing names found the right presents and stuck fast. Then the presents with the glowing names popped back into the sack. All the others which belonged to children who had gone on holiday stayed in the air. Suddenly there was a whine that turned into a roar as Santa's plane swooped down, its red nose glowing just like a spotlight. Excuse the pun. A net came out of the plane and scooped up all the presents that had to be taken around the world, and then it zoomed off and was lost to sight.
Now I must be off to deliver the presents to all the children who are in the village, said Santa, and you can have a well-earned rest.
So Spot went back to her basket, and Santa went out of the window, and it reformed after him. He got back onto his sleigh, and was soon skidding from rooftop to rooftop, and lost to sight. In the morning, Spot woke up and stretched. Something was different. There was a strange smell by her basket that had not been there before when she went to sleep. She moved her nose round for a better sniff, and then she saw it. It was the most enormous, gigantic, stupendous, fantastic, nose-twitching, smelly bone you have ever seen. And tied to it, with a little red ribbon, was a card that said simply,
"From Santa."
So when you wake up on Christmas morning and find paw prints in the snow, you will know you were visited by Spot and Santa. And don't let any grown-ups tell you differently. After all, they can't see Santa either.